Everyone in the galaxy knew the rule, even if they pretended not to know it. It was spoken in busy spaceports, in dark bars, in military schools, and in pirate dens. It was written in small notes, whispered in training halls, and taught to young cadets before they were even allowed to wear a uniform. The rule was simple, clear, and terrifying. Do not attack human children. The words sounded soft, almost gentle, but every species knew the meaning behind them. The rule was not created by humans. It was created by everyone else. It was made from fear, from memory, and from the stories that no one wanted to see repeated again. Merchants told stories of it while counting credits. Old soldiers told it with shaking hands. Captains told it in low voices when passing near human space. They spoke about wars long ago, times when someone had hurt the young of humans, thinking it was a small thing, thinking it would break human spirit and make humans surrender. It did not break them. It changed them. In old archives, locked behind security codes, there were records nobody watched anymore. Black and white images of burning stars, silent fleets moving like shadows, worlds cut off in a single coordinated strike. Not wild, not messy, cold, careful, final. Humans did not shout in those recordings. They did not laugh. They did not boast. They simply acted. That was what scared the galaxy the most. So the rule was born. Not from law, not from love, from survival. Do not attack human children. Across the galaxy, many leaders laughed in public about it. They said humans were dramatic. They said humans were emotional. They said humans cried too much, felt too much, cared too much. They said this rule was exaggerated, a myth, an old ghost story. But then, when meetings ended and halls were empty, those same leaders quietly told their generals, "Remember the rule. I don't care what happens. Do not touch their young." On a small green world called Eden 3, the rule felt like a story from far away. It was a peaceful human colony. Fields of golden crops moved in the wind. Simple houses stood under blue sky. Children ran, shouted, laughed, and argued about small things. They raced bikes on dirt paths. They drew pictures in the sand. They dreamed about starships and heroes. No one thought about war there. The air smelled like rain and soil. School bells rang. Teachers smiled. Life was soft and warm, but above the planet, in deep black space, ships watched. Their hulls were dark and cold. Their engines were silent. They did not answer calls. They did not send messages. They only watched the small blue-green world turning below them. Somewhere on those ships, someone was thinking very dangerous thoughts. They believed the rule was a lie. They believed humans were weak now. They believed the galaxy had changed, and that fear of humans was old and useless. They believed that hurting what humans loved most would control them, force them, bend them. They thought they were clever. They thought history was just a story. On Eden 3, a small boy tied his shoes badly and laughed when they came loose again. A girl hugged her notebook like treasure. Another child waved to a parent at the door and ran inside before the door closed. Simple moments, quiet life. No one looked at the sky and saw danger, yet in the wider galaxy, radio channels buzzed with rumors. Something was moving, something large. Patrols disappeared from their routes. Trade ships reported strange sensor shadows. Old admirals felt cold for no reason and could not explain why. The rule returned to many minds like a ghost. Do not attack human children. In dark corners, old veterans shook their heads and muttered, "If someone is foolish enough to break it, the galaxy will burn again." But on the council worlds, far from real risk, safe behind guards and soft chairs, some powerful beings smiled. They thought they understood everything. They spoke in long words and proud voices about strategy and pressure and control. They forgot what the rule was really about. It was not about human pride. It was about what happens when love is pushed past its last limit. On Eden 3, the wind changed. Birds took sudden flight. Dogs began barking without reason. Teachers paused. For a second, feeling something they could not name. Children looked up when shadow passed over the playground, high above. Unknown ships shifted position. The calm world did not know yet, but the line everyone feared was about to be crossed. The first rule of the galaxy, the rule built from blood and memory, the rule that should never have been tested, stood like a thin wall between peace and something far darker. And somewhere, very far away, humanity had not yet heard the news. But soon, it would. The morning on Eden 3 began in a strange way, though no one understood it yet. The sun rose like always, warm and bright, but the birds did not sing as loudly. The air felt heavy, as if the world itself was holding its breath. A few adults noticed it and looked at the sky for a second, then shook their heads and went back to daily life. Children hurried to school, laughing, shouting, and racing each other to the doors, unaware that history was already turning toward them. The first person who truly knew something was wrong was not a soldier or a leader. It was a child. A small girl stopped in the middle of the playground and stared upward. She did not know what she was looking for. She only knew that the blue sky suddenly felt crowded. A shadow moved across the sunlight, thin like a cloud but too straight, too sharp. She pointed up, but the teachers were busy calming others and nobody listened yet. Then the alarms began. They did not sound like school bells. They were deep and cold and long, the kind of sound that went through the bones and made the heart beat faster. Every adult on Eden 3 froze for 1 second. They knew this sound from drills. They hoped they would never hear it in real life. Incoming ships. The calm world changed in a single breath. Teachers shouted orders with shaking voices but steady hands. Inside, stay together, doors opened. Students were guided into safe rooms. Parents received emergency messages and ran, some barefoot, some still holding cups of tea. Soldiers activated defense shields, their faces pale but focused. In orbit, the unknown fleet revealed itself. Dark shapes slid out of nothing, like teeth appearing from a black mouth. They did not answer hails. They did not send warnings. They did not ask for surrender. They simply aimed for a heartbeat. There was silence. Then the sky caught fire. Columns of light fell from above, not one or two but many, tearing the air and shaking the ground. Windows shattered, the earth trembled. Buildings shook as if the planet itself was afraid. Children covered their ears and cried. Teachers wrapped their arms around them and whispered, "It will be okay," even when they did not believe it. Themselves, the defense grid tried to respond. Shields rose, glowing faint blue. Interceptor drones launched into the sky like a swarm of silver insects. Some enemy shots were blocked. Some were not. A bus full of children skidded as the road cracked open. The driver did not think of himself. He steered toward a shelter entrance and shouted for the kids to run. Small hands held each other. Some fell, stood again, kept moving. Ordinary people became heroes in quiet ways, without speeches, without music, only with courage. In a control room underground, officers stared at the screens in horror. The attackers were not pirates. They were organized, trained, and confident. This was not a raid. This was a message. Someone, somewhere had chosen to break the first rule. On one of the enemy ships, a cold voice gave orders. They targeted places where children gathered, not by accident but by plan. They believed fear was stronger than love. They believed humans would kneel if the cost was high enough. They believed history would bow to their logic. They did not understand what they were truly doing. Back on Eden 3, inside a shelter, a little boy clutched a broken toy and asked a teacher, "Are the stars angry?" The teacher wanted to cry but instead smiled and said softly, "No, the stars are just watching." The ground shook again. Communications officers sent signal after signal toward Earth and the nearest human fleets. Short messages, coordinates, final recordings. Some channels burned out as towers fell. Others survived long enough to carry voices into the dark, across light years of silent space. A few messages were simple. "We are under attack." Some were softer and much harder to hear. "Please, take care of them." Above the planet, one of the human patrol frigates that happened to be near Eden 3 tried to defend the colony. It fought far beyond its size and strength, like a small animal standing against a storm. It was outnumbered, outgunned, but it did not retreat. Its last act was to block a blast aimed at a school dome. It died without a sound, turned into light and dust. In the last minutes of the attack, the enemy ships did not speak, did not explain, did not justify. They simply stopped firing, turned and vanished back into the black, leaving behind burning fields, broken buildings, dust in the air, and a silence that felt endless. Eden 3 was wounded. The galaxy would later argue about numbers, reasons, and politics. But for the people there, it was simpler and much clearer. Families searched for one another with shaking hands. Rescuers dug with bare fingers. Names were called again and again with rising fear. When no answer came, the recordings continued to travel through space, carrying images of smoke, cries, bravery, and loss. They raced toward Earth faster than any ship could move, faster than any rumor could spread. Somewhere far away, human leaders were meeting about trade routes and research plans, thinking of normal days and quiet futures. Their screens would soon light up. Their rooms would soon fall silent. Because the first rule of the galaxy had been broken, and every star seemed to lean closer, waiting to see what humanity would do next. The message did not arrive with drama. It did not break through walls or shatter windows. It simply appeared, one by one, across Earth, in stations, command centers, research labs, homes, and quiet rooms. Screens flickered. Conversations stopped in the middle of sentences. Coffee cups were left halfway to lips. Music was paused. Laughter froze on faces. The recordings from Eden 3 began to play. No one spoke at first. There were no reporters talking over the video, no council voices explaining anything. There were only images: burning sky, shaking ground, broken streets, frightened children holding each other, teachers shielding small bodies with their own. There were sounds, too: alarms, falling stone, static, then tiny voices saying names that would never answer back. The entire planet seemed to inhale and forget how to exhale. In the United Earth Assembly Hall, leaders stood up without realizing they had done so. Some reached for chairs and missed. A general who had been in 3 wars covered his mouth with his hand and looked away, then forced himself to look back again. A diplomat dropped a pen and it rolled across the shining floor. The small sound strangely loud. No one asked who had done it yet. That question could wait. The only thing that existed in that moment was lost. In a quiet apartment in New Mumbai, an old woman watched the recording alone and pressed a photo of her grandchildren to her chest. In Seattle, a bus driver pulled over and stared at the screen on the dashboard while passengers fell silent behind him. On farms, in cities, in orbiting stations, humans stopped moving. The world did not scream. It went quiet, and that silence was the most frightening thing in the galaxy. In an underground command complex, rows of lights turned red one by one as confirmation signals came in. The attack was verified. Eden 3 defenses destroyed. Civilian areas hit first. No warning, no demands, no negotiations. Cold design. Deliberate choice. The first rule had been broken, not by accident, not in a confused battle, but with planning. A security chief whispered. They targeted the children, and the room, already silent, seemed to fall deeper into stillness. As if even the machines did not want to make noise anymore, the highest leaders of Earth gathered. Military, civilian, scientific, spiritual. No grand speech was given, no table was struck, no fist was raised. They simply watched the recordings again, from beginning to end. Without looking away, an admiral closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were calm, like deep water with something vast moving underneath. Confirm responsible party. Someone said quietly. Teams move without being told twice. Not rushed, not frantic, certain. Networks were traced. Weapon signatures identified. Jump coordinates backtracked. A line appeared across star maps, bright and cruel. They did not guess. They knew, but still the world did not roar. It remembered. Deep inside mountains, doors that had not opened in decades slid apart with echoing weight. Sublevels woke up that most citizens did not even know existed. Power flowed into machines built for moments everyone prayed would never come. Old protocols appeared on screens, sealed orders written long ago, activated only under one condition. If the children are attacked. Keys were turned by hands that did not shake. Codes were spoken with flat voices. Black fleets that had slept in hidden docks opened their eyes, so to speak, and the cold stars were reflected in their armor once again. Yet even then, there was no cheering. No talk of glory. Only duty. On public channels, Earth said almost nothing. There were no threats, no long declarations, no shouts for revenge. One single message was sent, addressed not to one world, but to the entire galaxy at once. It was a short message. Every species received it. Every ruler, every soldier, every pirate, every trader, every captain on every lonely ship. The words were read aloud in markets and war rooms and distant outposts. They were translated into 100 languages. We tried to live in peace with you. We warned you. You broke the first rule. We are coming. No anger in the tone, just certainty. On distant planets, aliens felt something they could not explain, and looked toward the sky with unease. Some whispered old stories to each other, about the time humans had been pushed too far before, about how entire armadas had vanished like sparks in wind. The Galactic Council chambers filled with hurried footsteps and panicked voices. Some argued that humans were bluffing. Others, the older ones with tired eyes, simply sat down and rubbed their temples, remembering what they had hoped to forget. Back on Earth, candles were lit everywhere, in windows, in temples, on ship, bridges, and schoolyards where children played the day before. They were not candles for war. They were candles for promises, never again. Not without answer. Children slept, held tightly by parents. Some parents cried quietly into their children's hair. Some just stared at the wall, hearing in their minds the voices from Eden-3. The stars outside did not change, but humanity had. They had not become monsters. They had not become something new. They had simply removed the last restraint inside their hearts, the one called maybe they didn't mean it. They knew now. In the command hall, the final authorization appeared on the main screen. A single word glowed. Enacted. The room did not applaud. They simply began. Asterisk. The fleets did not launch with cheering crowds or waving flags. There were no parades, no loud speeches, no music. The ships simply left, from hidden docks inside asteroids, from quiet oceans where black hulls had slept beneath waves, from orbital rings that pretended to be only research platforms. The human fleets slipped into the dark. They did not announce their routes. They did not flash their lights. They folded into space the way a knife disappears into a sheath. Captains received sealed orders. They opened them in silence. Most of the officers were not shouting warriors. Many of them were soft-spoken people who liked gardens, old stories, cooking shows, and chess. But every one of them carried the same look in their eyes now, the look of someone who had decided there would be no second time for what had happened on Eden-3. The galaxy expected noise. Instead, it got precision, the first sign that humanity Had moved was not an explosion, it was absence. Pirate fleets that had secretly worked with the attackers simply stopped answering calls. Border stations that had laughed about the first rule were found empty, their systems powered down carefully, every weapon disabled, but every civilian untouched. The message was clear. Humans were hunting systems, not populations. In the quiet of space, a young alien patrol officer watched her radar screen blink strangely. Something enormous was passing, but her instruments could not lock onto it. She whispered to herself, "Ghosts," then corrected herself a heartbeat later. Not ghosts. Humans. On the other side of the galaxy, in a dark war room, the planners of the Eden 3 attack began to feel the cold fingers of reality wrap around them. Some shouted orders. Some made excuses. Some packed bags as if running would matter. They had imagined humans as predictable. They had assumed humans would scream on public channels, threaten loudly, posture for attention. They had not planned for this quiet, this careful, exact, surgical. Quiet. Human fleets did not bomb cities. They did not scorch farmland. They avoided hospitals and schools with impossible accuracy. They passed harmlessly over ships full of families. But command hubs, black budgets, hidden research bases that tied into the attack, those simply vanished from star maps. Worlds woke to find the sky unchanged and yet everything different. The people who had ordered the attack were gone from power. Files had been copied. Secrets exposed. Trials already prepared in distant, human courts. Humanity was not erasing the guilty. Humanity was collecting them on one captured bridge. A conspirator trembled as a human officer stood before him. The officer did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply placed a small recorder on the table. It played the voices of Eden 3 children. The conspirator broke before the recording ended. Across neutral space, other species watched the star charts update and felt their spines chill. This was not rage. This was not chaos. This was not revenge spraying in all directions like fire. This was resolve, narrowed to a point. In the Galactic Council, meetings turned frantic. Some demanded talks. Some begged to send apologies. Some suggested blaming a rogue faction to save themselves. But nobody could ignore the truth pressing down on the room like deep water. They had broken the first rule. There was no speech they could give that would make that smaller. Meanwhile, the humans kept moving. Long-range ships created corridors through space like invisible paths. Only they understood. Old alliances reawakened. Quiet friends who owed humans favors suddenly remembered their debts. Data flowed. Locations appeared. Names were connected like threads in a web, and at the center of that web sat the ones who had said, "Strike." The children first. Those names were circled. One council observer, watching the map, whispered, "They're not destroying the galaxy." A second finished the thought, voice shaking. "They're cleaning it." Back on Earth, there were no celebrations. There were no loud news feeds showing battle footage. Streets were calm. People went to work. Children were walked to school with hands held tighter than usual. Candles still burned in windows, steady points of light under the night sky. But under oceans, under mountains, in the vast cold close to the speed of light, the hunt went on. A human admiral stood alone in a darkened bridge, looking at the stars. He thought of Eden 3. He thought of all the worlds full of children, human and not, who deserved to grow up without fear. He did not think of conquest. He did not think of glory. He thought of promises. "Never again," he said softly, not to his crew, not to anyone in particular, but to the universe itself. The navigation AI marked the final jump point. The last major conspirator was ahead. The admiral gave a single nod. No trumpet sounded. No choir sang. The human fleet slipped forward, like a shadow crossing the face of a star. Asterisk, the captured world was not burning. There were no fallen towers, no shattered cities, no screaming crowds. Streets were strangely quiet, as if the planet itself had decided to listen. Human ships hung above the atmosphere like distant, patient storms that had not yet chosen to break dot in the capital. A great glass hall had been turned into something it had never expected to become, a place where the galaxy would be forced to look at itself. The conspirators were there, not dragged in chains through the streets, not beaten, not bleeding. They were seated, their hands were free, their clothes were neat, but their faces were pale, and their eyes kept drifting upward, toward the invisible weight of the human fleet beyond the sky. Rows of observers filled the balconies, ambassadors, journalists, military officers, even priests from a dozen worlds. No one spoke loudly. Even whispers were small. Everyone had the same unease inside them, a quiet question. What will the humans do now? At the far end of the hall, a single human representative stepped forward. Not a giant, not covered in armor, not glowing with power, just a person. Calm face, tired eyes. Straight back, he placed a small device on the table. "Before anything else," he said softly, "you will listen." The lights dimmed. The recordings began. They were not edited. They were not dramatized. They were real. The sky of Eden 3 burning, the sound of falling glass, the shaking breath of someone trying not to cry, a teacher whispering comfort she did not feel, a child saying, "It will be okay, right?" Without waiting for the answer, the hall did not move. Some of the conspirators tried to look away, then forced themselves to look back, because the eyes around them would not let them forget. Others stared straight ahead, their pride cracking. Like thin ice under heavy boots, a counselor from a distant world pressed trembling fingers against his eyes. A military observer clenched his jaw so hard tears escaped anyway. A young reporter dropped her stylus. It hit the floor with a small sound that echoed like thunder in the silence. Then one voice played, small, shaky, brave. "Tell my mom I wasn't scared." Something inside the hall broke, not loudly, not in chaos, that it broke quietly. The human representative did not shout. He did not accuse with sweeping gestures. He simply looked at the conspirators and asked one question that felt heavier than any weapon. Who here believed this was necessary? No one answered first. Then, slowly, one of the planners raised his hand. His voice shook, but he tried to make it sound like logic. "We believed. Fear controls humans. That hitting what you protect most would force you to obey." He swallowed. "We miscalculated." The human inclined his head a little. "Yes," he said, "you did." Another conspirator burst into words, desperate, angry, at the shape of his own fear. "You're going to wipe us out now, aren't you? That's what the stories say. Burn worlds. Erase species. Become the monsters you warn us about." The human didn't move for a long second. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. "If we meant to do that," he said, "there would be no one left in this hall to ask that question." The words sank deeper than any threat. Screens lit up along the walls. Evidence appeared. Plans, payments, signed orders, secret messages, lists of targets where children gathered. There was no room for lies anymore. No space to hide behind politics or excuses. The galaxy watched itself being shown in the mirror, and it did not like the reflection. "Your guilt is not in your fear of us," the human said. "Your guilt is that you thought children were tools." He looked up, not at the conspirators now, but at everyone, human or alien, small or grown, born under blue sky or red. Children are not bargaining chips. They are not pressure points. They are not levers you pull to move governments. He breathed once, steady, controlled. They are the reason governments exist at all. Security drones moved silently into place. Not weapons drawn, just present, just final. Sentences were read aloud, not shouted. Trials were recorded. No lynch mobs, no secret cells. Justice, slow and public, like a door closing one careful. Inch at a time. Some of the guilty begged. Some stayed stone-faced. Some cried without making a sound. The observers understood something dangerous and beautiful at the same time. Humans were terrifying when enraged. Humans were even more terrifying when calm. Outside the hall, civilians of the captured world were escorted to safety zones. No homes were burned, no libraries touched, no schools closed in fear of retribution. A small alien child climbed onto a relief worker's knee and asked, "Are they going to hurt us?" The worker shook his head gently. "No, we're here because someone hurt children, not because of who you are." In orbit, the fleet waited. No drums, no fanfare. Just watchful stars and the quiet, steady heartbeat of engines ready for whatever must come next. Asterisk, the galaxy had seen the steel side of humanity. The fleets, the silent precision, the unshakable will. What it had not expected to see next was the other face, the one almost everyone forgot when they told stories meant to scare children. Compassion. On the captured world. While courts continued and evidence flowed, something else began quietly. Human relief ships landed beside the same shuttles that had brought soldiers. Their colors were different, soft greens and whites instead of deep blacks and grays. Medical tents opened. Food printers hummed. Clean water lines stretched through the streets, like silver threads in sunlight. The civilians of that world had been terrified. They had expected punishment. They had packed bags, hugged their families, prepared for the worst stories they had heard about humans to come true. But instead, they were asked a simple question: what do you need? A young alien mother stared in confusion at the human doctor in front of her. She waited for a trick. None came. He simply knelt to look her child in the eyes, checked a scraped arm, and smiled gently like any village healer on any small human. World. The child blinked and asked, "Are you the ones from the scary stories?" The doctor laughed softly. "Sometimes," he said, "but only for people who hurt kids." On another street, human engineers worked shoulder to shoulder with local workers, stabilizing damaged power lines. They didn't bark orders, they listened. They learned alien tools, alien customs, alien building rules, and then quietly made everything run smoother. Lights came back to neighborhoods that had gone dark. Elderly residents cried with relief. That had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with kindness. The galaxy watched. Cameras were everywhere. Streams carried the images farther and faster than any rumor ever had. Human soldiers lifting rubble with their exosuits while children from that world rode laughing on them like giant play machines. Translators kneeling in circles with frightened families, making sure no one was left out simply because they did not know the right words. An old alien priest whispered to his students, "We were wrong to think they are only sharp teeth. They are also open hands." In the high orbit, commanders received updates. Civilians evacuated. Schools reopened. Food shortages solved. They nodded, satisfied, not proud. Pride was for parades. This was for promises. Even some of the conspirators, awaiting judgment, watched through screens in quiet shock. They had planned for human fury. They had built defenses against human weapons. But they had not built anything in their minds to defend against this. People who could be both unbreakable and gentle at the same time. News anchors across the galaxy tried to explain it. Some called it strategy. Some called it public relations. The wiser ones, usually the older ones, just smiled sadly and said, "No, this is how humans always were. We only remember when it is too late." Back on Earth, people followed every update. Not as entertainment, but as a promise kept. They saw alien children wrapped in emergency blankets, drinking warm soup, smiling shy smiles. And Earth smiled back. Gifts poured out. Art supplies, books, teaching files, messages written by human kids for alien kids saying, "It will be okay. We know how fear feels." The human representative returned to the great glass hall once more. This time the air felt different. Less like a storm, more like the sky after rain. He spoke slowly, carefully. We came because you broke the first rule. We acted because you left us no choice. He paused, then continued, voice softer now. But we did not come to break the galaxy. He looked at the rows of ambassadors, some ashamed, some relieved, all listening. We will repair what can be repaired. We will protect the innocent. Human or not human does not matter. Child means child. Then the tone changed, like a quiet door closing. But hear this clearly. Engrave it on your ships. Teach it in your schools. Write it in your laws. The room leaned forward without meaning to. If you ever again use children as weapons, shields, hostages, or tools, he said, you will not meet our diplomats first. You will not meet our traitors. You will not meet our sinners or our scientists. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. You will meet the part of us you woke. On Eden 3, the words hung in the hall like a new constellation. Outside, the fleets repositioned. Some ships remained to protect and rebuild. Others turned slowly toward the stars, engines warming. Their work here was not finished, but it was changing. In the streets below, an alien child drew with chalk on repaired pavement. She drew a star, then a small blue planet, then two hands, one human, one not, holding each other. When her teacher asked what it was, she answered in the simple truth only children say so easily. It is the rule now. Night fell on the captured world. Lights shone in windows again. And far beyond, in the darkness between suns, the last unanswered question waited. What final shape would the new law of the galaxy take, and who would speak it aloud? Asterisk, the day the rule was spoken aloud, the galaxy felt different, though the planets still turned, and the suns still burned as they always had. The great chamber of the Galactic Council was fuller than it had ever been. Not just politicians and generals, but teachers, healers, artists, elders, students, and, in a few quiet corners, children from different worlds who had been invited not as decoration, but as witnesses. There was no gold banner, no marching band, no pageantry, just a sense of weight, the heavy kind that comes when truth is finally ready to be said. And everyone knows there will be a before and an after. The human delegation walked in last. No armor, no soldiers, no obvious weapons. Just people with tired faces and eyes that had seen too much, carrying with them the calm certainty of those who had already paid the highest price. The central podium was offered to a human representative, but he did something unexpected. He stepped aside. Instead, a young woman from Eden 3 walked forward. She did not wear medals. She did not deliver a dramatic speech. She still had a faint scar along her cheek and a kindness in her eyes that no war had managed to erase. The hall recognized her from the recordings. She had been a teacher who refused to leave her students when the sky fell. Now she faced the galaxy. Her hands shook a little at first, then stilled. She looked at the children in the balconies, then at the leaders below. When I was small, she said softly, they taught us to raise our hands before we spoke. So today, I am raising mine on behalf of the children of every world. She lifted her hand, just a little, and no one breathed for a moment. We are not your shields, she continued. We are not your tools. We are not your levers to pull when you want power, or fear, or control. We are children. We learn. We play. We dream of ships and oceans and songs that haven't been written. Yet, her voice grew steadier. And no cause in the universe is worth breaking us for. No thunder rolled. No orchestra swelled. Only silence, the kind that means people are truly listening. A council archivist recorded every word, aware that history had chosen its page. The human representative stood beside the teacher now. He spoke not over her, but after her, as if he were simply finishing what she had begun. Humanity will rebuild Eden 3, he said. Brick by brick, life by life. He turned slowly, looking at the faces around him. Reptilian, avian, crystalline, mammalian, shapes of every kind. But this is bigger than Eden 3. This is bigger than humans. He touched the console. Across the galaxy, screens flickered alive on mining stations, cargo docks, schoolrooms, farms under alien moons. Every species saw the same words appear in their own language. The first rule of the galaxy, he read it aloud. Do not harm. Children, not human children, not alien children, not any child. He paused, not for effect, but because the truth deserved room to breathe. They are not bargaining chips. They are not strategies. They are the future, and when you break the future, you break yourselves. He did not threaten. He simply stated what everyone already knew now. Those who break this rule will answer, not only to humans, but to every world that chooses to stand with us. Because this law is not ours alone. It belongs to anyone who remembers what it felt like to be small and afraid and still hope. The adults would do the right thing. Then something extraordinary happened. One by one, representatives of other species stood. An avian elder bowed her feathered head. A crystalline envoy raised both shining hands. A small amphibian delegate stood on the table so they could be seen and said in a clear, ringing voice, "We agree." The clerk's ledger filled line by line. Not imposed, chosen. The teacher from Eden 3 whispered, "Thank you, but her." Microphone caught it, and the whole galaxy heard gratitude instead of victory. Outside the chamber, new plaques were printed. They would hang in starship academies, border stations, military bases, and schools. Children would read them in mourning. Lessons, commanders would read them before entering war rooms. Pirates, even, would mutter them in bars before doing anything truly stupid. In large letters, simple and unpoetic, "Harm nitrogen monoxide child." The human fleets began to withdraw. Not because they were weak, because their work, the hardest part of it, was finished. On the rebuilt fields of Eden 3, crops waved again. New schools rose where the old ones had fallen. There were memorials, yes, but they were not made of anger. They were made of names, flowers, and quiet places where people could sit and remember, and then get up and live their lives fully, which is the greatest defiance of all. At the center of Eden 3's capital stood a new statue, a human child and an alien child, standing side by side, looking up at the stars, holding hands. No weapons, no chains, just hope. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see it. Some cried. Some smiled. Some left in silence that felt like prayer. The galaxy did. Not become perfect, but it became kinder. And whenever someone, somewhere in a dark room, began to plan something cruel and whispered, "What if we use the children?" someone else would slowly shake their head and reply, "Don't you know the first rule?" Because on the day the sky caught fire, the universe learned something it would never forget. Humans can be gentle, humans can be fierce. But if you harm the little ones of any world, you will meet both.